Occasionally, yeah. But it's recording though. All right. The way that I will know it's still recording is by make myself comfortable. Let's see. Because usually I sit on the okay. So so we'll know it's recording. We'll know it's dead if it stops blinking.
You know it's dead.
So Timmy turn.
So
born in the U.S. or
that's correct.
yeah, born in the U.S. Went to South Korea for a bit and then came back. So tell me a little bit about that. The whole.
So you want to know about my life?
Yeah.
Well, let me give you my autobiography in a nutshell. A long nutshell. Not that long, but I was born in America, in the U.S., and I moved to Korea when I was in middle school. And then I graduated high school in Korea and I moved back to the States for college, and here I am today.
Alright. So how was the experience changing from the U.S. to Korea and then back to U.S.? So what are some changes that you
honestly when I was living here as a kid, everything was really nice. I really enjoyed my life, and part of that I attributed to being in the United States and just being in such a big country, and everything was so new to me, just felt so great. But then again, I was a kid, and I think as children, everything seems great. I mean, you don't really get exposed, if you're fortunate enough, you don't really get exposed to things that are like negative so much. So when I moved to Korea, I started getting older, and you know, life progresses, and I started seeing more things, and I don't know, it just got more tough. It's like homework and stuff in school, and I started not liking it. But Korea was such a nice country, and I missed America because of what I thought was America, but it was more I missed my childhood. And so when it comes to like what I like better, it's really wherever I am, I like the other country better.
It's always greener on the other side of the grass.
Yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah.
But
So the transition, it was basically the transition from, well, during your childhood, you started out in the U.S. and it was like easier times, and then when you got to South Korea, it was like harder because of high school and just going through education and all that stuff. And then coming back here, was it still harder or like?
Yeah, actually, when I came back here, I mean, life kind of continued the same. Like it felt the same coming back here. It really didn't feel too much different. I thought I missed the States for the States, but when I came back here, I realized that, I mean, it doesn't matter really where you are. It's kind of what you make out of it. And so coming back here, I try to think more positively and everything. And I don't know, it was kind of different than when I was a child, you know?
So you learn to appreciate where you are more, because you always feel like there's something out there more, but it's really like
yeah, it's this whole thing with home. I think to everyone, home means a different thing, but for me, I guess home is there is no true home for me. You know, I mean, where I am now is home, and I'll miss the places I were in the past, but every time I move to a new place, that's my home.
So while you were in the U.S., were you like raised with your parents, or like did your parents move with you to Korea?
Yeah, so my parents have always lived with me. I grew up here with them, and I also have a sister. She she lived with me, and it's interesting because she was more settled. She was older, so she was more settled in America and like had her friends and everything, had her friend group. Me, I really didn't mind leaving. I was excited to see something new. And so when we moved to Korea, my parents came with me and everything. I was very excited, like meeting new people. My sister, not as much. And as the years passed by, I started missing America and I wanted to go back. and she ended up liking Korea more, and she's decided to stay, whereas I decided to come back here. So, and my parents, they came as well. I mean, we all came as a family to Korea. They decided it'd be a good idea to raise me there half of my life, as well as my sister. And yeah, I guess I'm back here now because that was my choice, and my parents, they've kind of released their children into the world. So now I'm kind of on my own, independent, mostly. I mean, almost completely financially, but we're still getting there.
Yeah, almost there.
I think I am now, but we'll see when those loans kick in.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. Because they mentioned that like one of the things that hinders a lot of young people in investing, it's like they're like once you're straight out of college, you just got a job, but you also have the loans kicking in, so they're
Yeah.
like a big chunk of your paycheck. So.
True, and it depends where you go to college and I mean where you're from. For a lot of people that are international and out of state, they're paying way more than someone who's living in state. I'm thankful enough to be in state. Even though I moved to Korea, we've always had a home here, and we technically qualify for in-state. So I was fortunate to come to a state school and be able to afford it and everything. But for a lot of people, it's just they're in so much debt, way more than I could ever see myself being in. And I mean, good luck. That's tough. Maybe if Bernie's president, take care of that.
So that's scary. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm very grateful to for, because it's like loans. I don't know. It's debt in general. I feel like it's a scary thing, because even with a credit card right now, if it goes above a certain amount for the available, it's like I feel stressed. So imagine for like over 20,000 or 30,000. That's like low end of what you can afford. So.
You have to be able to manage and understand how much you're able to. Like how much you're able to pay off and everything. Because so many people, I think, go into debt for the wrong reason. They decide that paying a credit card off using another credit card might help them, but sometimes that's really not the best way to do things.
Gotta look at the APR.
There you go.
But we're learning. So you mentioned that you're almost financially independent of your parents, I'm assuming. So how is that path? Like, how do you feel that now you're able to start making choices for yourself and through your own economic means rather than having to depend on your parents?
It's really nice. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have parents who their first priority is like their child when it comes to like college and everything, and raising them and everything, and not having me worry about that. But I've come to a point where I'm working, and I personally want to kind of pay back that mentality, and I want to have them not worry about me anymore in that sense, because I don't feel like they have to. Because now that I'm working and I am able to make money, and I'm taking up these opportunities like being a resident assistant and everything, not having to pay for housing or food, stuff like that, I think makes me feel good that I'm able to take care of that and support myself and be independent. And it's also a little bit freeing knowing that if I make a decision, while a lot of times I will include my parents in it because I think they have a lot of experience and they'd be able to help me with things, now I don't really have to, and there's not going to be any risk towards that. If I decide to go out and buy a car, I can do that. If I can afford it, of course, I can do that without having to talk to anyone first, because I make my decisions. I do my own taxes, everything. I mean, literally independent, both financially and like how the government sees it, I guess. So
that's cool. So how does that feel that you're starting to like? You mentioned, for example, if you wanted to buy a car, you don't have to go through your parents for that. You don't have to go through anyone for like getting sort of that.
Except for the car dealer.
Yeah, of course. But how does it feel that you're sort of paving your your own path on like what you want to do in life. So basically, the question boils down to, you're no longer depending on them. So how has that change sort of manifested itself in the choices that you make now?
I think I'm a lot more cautious in what I do, and definitely I don't spend as much, I guess. Knowing that I'm working for what I'm getting,
Yeah.
I'm definitely being more frugal. I'm eating certain foods that may be cheaper. You know, maybe great value is great.
You start seeing why people shop at Walmart.
That's right. I mean, yeah, the value is great, but also the quality can be great too. I mean, I learned to live in such a way where I can afford things that I want, but also I'm not going to be stressed about having to make more money, you know, like to be able to make enough where I can survive and have enough in my bank account to support myself if there was an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess I'm definitely more careful with the things that I buy, and when it comes to electricity and water use and everything, not wasting. I mean, I've never been someone that like left the water on or left lights on. I've always turned it off, but now you just think about it even more. Maybe I won't even turn the lights on at all, you know, just to save, just to save electricity and save the money. I mean, priority should be saving electricity, seeing how like the direction our world is going now. I should probably turn those lights off. But then again, utilities are included here, as bad as that is. But yeah, I would say that's how it goes for me.
So one of the things that hit me while I was growing up is that everything costs something. So it's like,
oh yeah,
the saying, there's like no true free lunch, something along those lines. It's like, it hit me like a bit back where I started having to pay for stuff myself.
Yeah.
But so when did that happen to you? Like, when did that occur to you that life is like, you get what I'm asking?
Honestly, I think probably when I was in Korea, just because, okay, so Korean currency is a little bit, well, it's different than US. So, and I started spending more when I went to Korea. When I was in the States, being in elementary school, I guess I didn't really deal with money at all.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to Korea and being in middle school and high school, that's when I started spending, like going to the store and getting snacks before school or after school or whatever, or going with my friends to like events and stuff. And getting this physical money made me realize that like I only have a certain amount to spend, and slowly it decreases, but it doesn't increase. I mean, when I wasn't working, everything that I spent just went away and didn't come back. So knowing that I had to be careful, I mean, that started when I was very young. So, yeah, what was the direction you were going with? What was the question?
When did you realize that a lot of life you have to pay for it? So it's basically, in order to live, you have to have the income.
Yeah, I think middle school. I mean, thankfully, I wasn't worried about housing stuff or any like anything in regards to toiletries or any of that stuff, because my parents would take care of that. That was like, we lived in a house together. But once I came to college, that's when I started thinking more about it, because then you're starting to pay for like shampoo and soap and toilet paper, and like these aren't things that you buy as a middle schooler, at least things I didn't buy as a middle schooler and even high schooler because I lived with my parents. But in college, I mean, you have to learn the hard way that if you don't have toilet paper and you're in an apartment, good luck, things are gonna be shitty. So,
yeah. I mean, you could always use a shower, you know. People have been swiping on.
I mean, if you got a detachable shower head, that's your choice.
Yeah, but yeah, people are going crazy on the toilet paper.
I know. What is it with toilet paper? Why is that a necessity in times like this? Coronavirus.
It's because it's like there's a small subset of people that want it, and since they get so much, like other people start to want it too. Just
That
in
makes
fear
sense.
of not having any, and then it's just like
Yeah.
what do you call those, feedback loop? Like
Yeah, I mean that's one way to put it. It's toilet paper. You have Lysol wipes. What is it, like hand sanitizer? All this stuff. It's just going. Masks, gloves, some food, types of food, bread. All that stuff is just getting sold out real quick.
So I don't know if you pay attention to this, but have you seen like the economy?
I've been looking at it, yeah, and my group members in my senior design group, they're all like looking at the stocks and invested and everything, and I mean, things aren't looking great. I mean, it's no surprise. I don't follow it too detailed. Like I'm not that big into it. I'm not too invested right now.
So they usually say that, well, not they, Warren Buffett usually says that it's to be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. So basically in the stock market, when people want to sell it the most, that's when you should buy it. So are you gonna be putting in, or?
I actually considered. I was looking at some apps the other day, and looking at the Tesla stock, because the way that's looking, I mean, they're bound to go up. Just with the way Musk is doing things, I definitely predict that they're going to be doing pretty well over the next few years. But I think it all comes down to time and how long you spend. A lot of people look at going in at the right time, but going in at the right time might help you in the short term, but in the long term, I mean, if you stay in for a long time, you're bound to make profit. I mean, I've heard that before, but I don't know if that's true or not, because I mean, I'm young and I haven't been invested for very long, so but yeah, I don't know.
I agree. So, since you're young right now and you could afford to make those sort of financial.
Can I though? I'm buying great value products, you know.
Yeah, but it's now's the best time. Like if you don't know how to invest, I don't know, $100 or $50, how are you gonna do it?
I'm definitely invested.
I think that this is the position it was in. Oh, this is good.
Yeah. It's still recording.
Yeah. So. It cut out. We had over an hour, okay, and then it cut out. It only left us with 18 minutes, better than 0.
17 minutes.
17 minutes and 42 seconds. That's a common issue with GoPro One, because we googled a couple of things and people aren't happy.
So at exactly 17 minutes in, probably.
We should really check to see if it's blinking red.
Should I set an alarm?
Set an alarm for 17 exactly. Now I'm gonna want to keep on staring at it, so I won't be able to focus on. Now they're gonna see the shift in my
legs up now.
But you realize what I was telling you, right? After a certain amount of time, you start to like forget that's actually there. Or did you always feel like it was there, the camera?
Oh yeah, I got more comfortable.
Yeah.
But I saw that it was solid, and I was like, I hope that doesn't mean anything bad.
Now we're just gonna keep on like hovering every time you talk to it, like. But yeah.
Where were we?
Well, by the end of our conversation, which this decided not to record, we were talking about instruments and the like, if fundamentals are really essential for building a project. And basically, the summary was that
they are fundamental. Without them, you can't.
You don't need to know them. Like if you want to make something quick, or if you want to like top what do you call that? When you dip your toes in something, there's a term for it.
Experiment.
Yeah, experiment. If you want to experiment with it, you don't really need to go into the fundamentals. It's if you want to specialize that you go into the core of whatever you're learning.
Yeah.
Whether that be for coding, he made the reference of going from zeros and ones to assembly to C to Java to higher level languages like Python, etc. That you wouldn't really need to know. You wouldn't really, like, if you're making something quick with Python, you wouldn't really need to know the lower level stuff. But if you are just if you want to get special, well, if you want to make a better application and continue in pursuing whatever you're doing with it, to go and experience, and learn about those building blocks, like see and all that good stuff. We also talked about financial independence. We talked about a bunch of things that this decided not to take. So just to stay true to the archive of conversation, right? Because the goal of this, I think I figured out what the goal of this podcast is going to be. It's going to be an archive of conversations where you're going to be able to compare yourself from like this current time right now. So you have
Coronavirus.
That's the main topic of
right
of
now.
our year, 2020.
On March 21st, 2020.
So we'll be able to look back on it and see what we looked like and what kind of things we were talking about, how stupid we looked or how cool we looked, and etc. So that's the goal of this. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, so we're continuing to pick this guy's brain, okay?
Let's pick it.
Did an hour of picking, now I'm gonna do some more picking, okay? Let's go into the nasty stuff. Tim, what's the nastiest thing you've experienced at UMassD?
Well, as you know, I'm a resident assistant.
Yeah.
And the resident assistants basically are people who live with students. We are students. We're in the same boat as students, but the only difference is we are kind of the eyes and the ears for housing and residential education, the department in the school that makes sure things are running smoothly and the building isn't getting destroyed and students are able to learn in an environment that's fit to learn. In other words, we're the tattletales. I mean, people might see us as snitches, tattletales, or babysitters or whatever, but I see it as like a good opportunity to kind of make this like a better and a more fun place to be. And you don't necessarily, I mean, you go through college and you don't really think about it. Not everyone thinks about the RAs that much. I mean, not everyone has a lot of experience. Hopefully everyone has a chance to like know their RA and have a good experience, but some people don't always have one. But for me personally, it's always been a good opportunity to get people together and get people knowing their neighbors and everything. And why am I saying all this? Well, when it comes to the nastiest thing, part of the job as an RA is to, at least for us, is to go and do room checks or weekly walkthroughs or bi-weekly walkthroughs depending on how things are going. And we're supposed to look at the bathrooms, and that's probably where you'll see the dirtiest things. But you can also see dirty things in people's rooms, and every semester we'll do a health and safety check just to make sure that people aren't living in filth. And some people are living in filth. I take pictures just in case I need to document anything I see that may be unsanitary or dangerous to someone's health. But I've seen rooms that have food that look like it's been there since the start of the semester. And this is like a midway through the semester check, and there's like flies. I've seen someone had trash in their room that had food in it with like bones from chicken, raw chicken. It had like food, like drinks and everything, and it was all just smushed up in this bag, and it was causing flies to come out from everywhere and infestate this whole like floor. And so this is one thing that I saw, and a lot of times it's culture, and some people grow up like this. So having to be able to communicate with those people and telling them that they can't do that is sometimes hard because they've grown up their whole life thinking it was fine. But I mean, that's the whole reason we're here, is for, in particular in that case, is to make sure that that stuff doesn't happen and those people can be educated. It's residential education, and part of that is to learn how to take care of yourself and live in a community with other people. So there's certain standards that are set in place. But yeah, that's pretty nasty. I saw one room that had cigarettes all over the ground, like toilet paper rolls everywhere. Saw a room with an animal that was left there, and like, that's it, just an animal. They left their pet there and they moved out. That was pretty gross.
Wow.
They
Wait, dead or?
It was still alive barely, but I've seen that. Toilets are a big thing. A lot of toilets are like, no one ever uses toilet brush, it seems like. So a lot of toilets, and those are very common. So I mean, to me that's not that nasty. But by far the nastiest thing I think I've seen so far is I opened up someone's desk drawer to someone who moved out, and there were fingernail clippings, and it looked like a whole like 6-7 months worth. You know, we don't check in people's desks, we don't open drawers or closet stuff, because that's people's property and everything. But when we go in for the end of the year and stuff, and just to make sure that, yeah, this person must have forgot their fingernail collection. So it was nasty, and I still have a picture to this day.
You have a just play it right there.
Yeah, it's somewhere deep in my phone, or maybe my computer. I don't know. Yeah, that's the nastiest thing I've seen. What's the nastiest thing that you've done? or
so we go from seen to done, right?
Or seen.
But seen,
or like dealt with.
Dealt with? Well, the nastiest thing I've seen and actually done, they actually like, they combine. They're combined. So it's one thing. It was bad. It was last semester. So it was during December, and it was like I was done with.
Yeah.
I think we were either done with finals or something along
So
those
you weren't
lines.
living with me then.
No,
That's
no. It was like a couple of months ago. That's how recent it was. And then we went to the rugby though. I went to the rugby. Well, it was the night that we were at Andy's. No, I don't think you were. I don't know if you were.
Oh, I remember that night.
Yeah.
I think you guys came up here.
Yeah, I came up. Yes, that night.
Not Henry. You and someone else.
I don't remember.
Chu.
Yeah, probably Chu. But whoa, bit of confusion with it. To me.
Wait, what?
Why you say Chu and Henry?
Was it Henry? No.
Just to give some context, my boy here, both Chu and Henry are Asian people, okay? It's he's low-key racist.
I just said, hey, you're the one saying that. I just said Henry because I thought Henry was there. It was someone that was younger.
Well, I don't remember who it was. Yeah.
Dimitri? It was someone
maybe
under 21.
there, someone along those. Oh, Chris maybe.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But they were like, can I come down and get my jacket?
It was probably Chris.
What was
Chris
that
is,
you?
I don't know. But yeah, after I came up there and the cops, well, they went to Andy's place.
Wait,
they weren't really cops. They weren't really cops.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to the Dells, and then I was already not in a safe, not safe,
Oh yeah, I
like
know.
intoxicated
Should
sort
have
of.
never.
And then I just went to the rugby though, and it was added onto it. And then next thing I know, I was just in someone else's room. And then I wake up and I go downstairs and I check the bathroom. And oh my goodness, bro. I had some Jersey Mike's, which is a sub.
Yo, I actually have had some yesterday.
Yeah, it's bomb, right?
Yeah.
Well, imagine
Not
that. Imagine that you had that sandwich and then you just give it all out after.
Oh no.
My goodness. And it was like meat and bread and a bunch of things together. Some of it was in the sink, some of it was on the bathroom, some of it was on like the floor, some of it was still wet from the night, like because I knocked out pretty early.
Yeah.
And it was I had to clean it up. So,
You cleaned it
yeah,
up?
I was
it
like,
you?
Yeah, it was me.
No.
Because I puked it all out. I had some Jersey Mike's
that's
left.
nice that you cleaned it up.
I had to. I couldn't like. Who else would have cleaned it? You know, it was.
I mean, whoever was. Not you.
Nah, but it was the grossest thing I've seen and the grossest thing I've done.
It's funny because it's from you too.
Yeah.
You produced the gross.
Yeah.
You are gross.
I am gross, but it was a learning experience. Ever since then, I've chilled off on the alcohol. Actually, I haven't touched alcohol, so.
And we'd like to thank our sponsor, Corona.
Corona 2020. It's 2020.
Yeah. No, I mean, alcohol makes people react in different ways, and sometimes it's probably best just not to react at all. So yeah, I mean, maybe sophomore year. I probably shouldn't say that. I've never really drunk, like, gotten like super drunk, I guess. Usually I feel too sick by the time I get to that point, so I'll just stop. And these days I really haven't been drinking at all, like junior, senior year. Maybe once. I went to the bar once this year, and probably won't go again.
Why not?
Well, this whole Corona thing, everyone went home, so.
Oh yeah, you're talking about college.
Yeah.
So being an RA, I always thought it was cool to be an RA because you get the opportunity, like, since you know everyone on your floor, you're like, it's like you could become like you could become the social sort of aspect of those people who like don't really know how to interact, especially with like newer people. So how has that opportunity like have you been able to leverage that, the fact that you're like the one person that knows everyone?
A little bit, yeah. I think it was cool because so you were my roommate during this time, and actually you were there since the start. My first year as an RA. So you've seen me starting out, and I mean you've seen me progress. And so starting out, I mean everything's so much fun. It's just you have to keep in mind that you have a job and you have to make sure like things are set, like policies being followed and everything. But at the same time, you're a student and you want to have fun just like everyone else. So kind of learning how to balance that and using it to your advantage to like help other people is so important. And I think starting out it was so much fun, and I knew everybody on my floor and almost everybody in the building, and so people seemed to kind of see that I was friendly and that I never turned anyone away, at least not intentionally. And so getting to know these people and getting to learn about them and doing weekly walkthroughs and everything, I started learning about each and every person and connecting them to other people. And so now I know John, who lives over there, is into archery, and so is Dan from the first floor. So now I can be like, wait a minute, you're into archery too? You know John from upstairs? And he's like, no. I'd be like, well, he's into it too. Like, maybe you guys should connect or whatever. So stuff like that's really cool. Also, you'll be in someone's room doing a walkthrough, and you'll see a person from the other floor in their room, with their clothes off. And so now you'll see like, oh shoot, I didn't realize this was going on, but now I know. So it's just like you learn a lot about the people that you live with, and it just brings so much opportunity to connect them. And also for the people who maybe have trouble finding new friends and don't want to talk to people, I'm forced to because it's my job. So even if I don't want to talk to you, or you're not someone I would talk to because you're like the cool person or the only person or the maybe a certain race or a certain gender that I wouldn't talk to, or a certain political view, now I'm forced to talk to you. And I'm forced to, like, I guess I'm not really forced, but it's part of my nature to learn about it and to communicate and figure out how each and every person thinks. And so by doing that, I kind of learn more about myself as well, and how I interact with people. And so it's really cool. Even the people who are super lonely and depressed, and having them talk to you and tell you that maybe they're contemplating suicide. It's like, I get a lot of people like that, and to let them know that they're not alone and that other people are in the same boat, and then to refer them to counseling, of course, because I'm not a counselor. But to be that person there for them just means a lot, and hopefully it allows them to continue their college career and end up graduating and looking back and being thankful for not making like those bad choices or whatever. So, and then also being there for the people who are puking in the Dell at 2 a.m. in the morning and saying, hey, I have to call the ambulance on you because you might not be in a good state and you could risk alcohol poisoning and stuff. But at the same time, I'm going to come back the next day and follow up and say, how are you doing? Here's a Gatorade I bought for you. Do you want to talk about how your night went? And then kind of just know that I'm a student too, and I've been in the same boat, believe me. But I mean, we're here for each other, you know? So even though it's my job, I mean, regardless of if I'm on duty or not, I'm still gonna help you. And I hope you do the same for me. So that's kind of what I take away from the job, and I think it's such a good thing to have. And unfortunately, not all RAs think the same way, and some people use it to different extent. So, I mean, but for the most part, that's what I think it should be, you know.
So, for there's two main ways that I want to split this talk off. It's first the depression side of it, like how often does this happen, like that you actually see those people on campus? Because I feel like it's one of those things that now we're starting to like see it a bit more since social media and all that stuff, but it still feels like I don't know, it's not being talked about enough.
Really?
And there was a second part, but I forgot what it was. But let's start with that. How often does that actually happen?
So it depends, because my sophomore year I was very involved, very, very out there, and junior year as well, becoming the senior resident assistant and kind of being down in the office every single day. People would see me and they would know who I was because my picture was pasted everywhere. And I was the person that they were supposed to contact if they needed anyone after their RA, of course, but some people weren't comfortable with their RA. So, I mean, it happens very often, I would say. How often do they come to me? Maybe not as often, because we have a team of 8 RAs in this building, and last year and this year, actually all my years as an RA, I've always had such great teams, and like being the SRA these past 2 years, I've had such a good experience with these people, these other RAs, and they've done such a good job. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they've gotten information like this and handled it themselves and didn't even have to involve me, because I think that's how great they're able to. They have such, my RAs have such good connection with their residents. But for me personally, every once in a while I would get it. Usually it's the same people, not new people often, but sometimes people stay in their room so much and they never go out. And so by doing the weekly walkthroughs and going into their room and knocking and being like, hey, anybody home? And saying, how are your classes going? And hearing them say how they're failing other classes and they're thinking about dropping out. And just talking to them and trying to figure out like options and ways that they can improve, and telling them about resources like the counseling center and the tutoring center and stuff. Things that maybe they haven't heard about because they're in their room all day long. I guess it doesn't happen too often, but like we go out and we find it if they're not coming to us, you know. Eventually it's gonna come out. And so sometimes I'll sit in the office and someone will come in just to talk. And you know, I love it talking to people. Like I love when people come in the office, not just because I'm an RA, but like if I wasn't an RA, I'd still enjoy being able to talk to people when they come into the office every day. But these people, like I have a long list of people that will come into the office daily or weekly or like every once in a while just to pop in and say hey. We usually have very long conversations, and some of these people, who knows how they'd be if they didn't have someone to talk to. I'm sure they have their own group of friends or whatever, and even if they don't, I mean, or even if they do, you know, I'm still there to talk to them and listen to them. And that's the thing with me, is I'm super patient, and I'll sit there and I'll listen to them for hours. They can talk as long as they want, and I'm never going to tell them to go away. Unless, of course, I'm tired. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, these people just want to be listened to, and I think everyone wants to be listened to. Everyone wants to feel useful. So, and that's what I'm there for, you know. So if you want to talk about your ex, or if you want to talk about your mom telling you to take out the trash, like, tell me about all your problems, or your roommate. We get a lot of roommate conflicts too, and that's a big one. And I had a few roommate conflicts that I was going to deal with after spring break, but coronavirus came in and everyone moved out.
It's good to see the positive sides of things too.
So like, there's a good list of roommate conflicts that now I just crossed off my list as complete.
It's something though.
Yeah,
that's cool. So So basically, it's one of those things that you have to look for. That it's not really gonna come to you because
Sometimes, yeah.
I feel like it takes a lot of guts to be able to tell someone else that you're mentally not well.
It really does. And I'm not a counselor. I don't think any of the RAs are. Some of them might be psychology majors, but we always refer to the counseling center because they're trained, and those are resources that we're paying for by coming to college. And so I'll always tell people I'm listening, I hear you, and I can help you in any way that I can. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be taking any advice from someone that's not really a counselor. And you make your own decisions too, so don't listen to someone and make a decision based on what they say. You're responsible for what you do, and so you're the one making that decision.
That's cool too. So
Yeah.
so one of the things that like one of the building pillars of well, I wouldn't say building pillar, but like an interesting aspect that I find of you that I admire is that you're like, you see that you mentioned in one of your stories, like people come to you and they start like talking to you and all that stuff. And it's like you're someone that they can express themselves to. And what do you think? Why do you think that is? Like that you're able to attract sort of individuals to come to you and do all that stuff. So
I don't know if it's everyone. I feel like maybe it's only a certain crowd. Part of me, I always thought like maybe it's because I'm half Korean and half white. And one of the things as international students I can relate to because I've lived in Korea for half my life. And so when people say, "Oh, I'm international," you wouldn't understand, or like I'm not from here, like my English is bad. I'm like, I've lived in a country where my Korean wasn't so great, and so I've experienced something similar. And so I have that group that I can talk to, and then I have the group of like people in the States, like white people, I guess, because I more visually look. Like you might not tell right away that I'm half Korean, but also I'm kind of a minority in a sense because I'm half Korean, half white, and maybe I can resonate with others who also feel like they're a minority. And I think a lot of people at our school are minorities, and those are the people who need someone similar to them to relate to. And so to a lot of those people, they probably think I'm not going to judge them. And I feel like me personally, like I do a lot of listening. When people talk to me, I don't really talk too much, I guess. I don't know. And then if they're talking, I try to listen as much as possible and hear what they're saying. And I guess that's why. Maybe they come up to me and I don't look intimidating. Maybe that's why, Because I think one thing is people will look at someone and think, "Oh, they're too cool to talk to. Like, there's no way I could ever be friends with them." But then when you really actually talk to them and get to know them, you realize, wow, they're not like I thought at all. Like Chu, I thought he was a gangster. when I started to work with him with the hackathon stuff, first time I ever worked with him, I was like, holy crap, like you're not at all what I expected. You're very similar to me in a certain sense. So, and now like we're very close friends. So it's interesting how things change based on your first perception of someone. So
yeah, so it's like
maybe that's why, I guess, not very intimidating at first glance. And then they get to know me and they're like, "Oh shoot, what, I made a mistake."
Yeah, that's what they say. They put that guy.
I don't know. I'm very open-minded, I would say. Although my girlfriend might say otherwise.
What is that?
I mean, sometimes you get into heated debates and stuff, and I think it's good to debate and to find another side that you might not agree with, and to try to argue it and figure out why people believe the things that they do. And I don't have anything wrong with that, but sometimes I go overboard and I try to find the extreme opposite. Like, say, for example, gun rights is something that's very controversial. Say you might believe that we shouldn't have guns or whatever, and then I would come in just regardless of my belief, I would go exact opposite of you, and I'd be like, I believe we should give a gun to every child under the age, over the age of 4. And you know, that's extreme and might be stupidity a little bit, but I think it's funny to debate.
Yeah, it's just for the jokes.
Yeah, so.
It's definitely interesting. I think it's really cool, like just broadening your views on things. Like it's like you believe one thing and then someone else comes in. You never know. Like you might not even know that was an option.
Yeah.
And then they come in and they just shatter what your beliefs were, or they like give you a better sense. Like you in college, even though that like it's one of those things that got cut out from the first recording where you mentioned that. So the question I asked was, like, since we could find everything online, why continue with college and what does college have that basically you can't find in an online education? And he mentioned that it puts you in an environment where you have to collaborate with others, and a lot of software, the world of software engineering is collaboration, and it sort of presents you in that environment where you have to like
work together.
I keep on doing this, but like push forward, work together. Yeah, and then it's a structured setting where things that you didn't even know you had to learn, it sort of presents that to you. So that's one of those things that now it's kind of changed my perspective on college. So yeah, it's cool to hear like the other side of the fence. So,
yeah, the wall.
Yeah. The wall?
The other side of the wall.
Don't they say fence?
How are we saying this?
The wall. Fuck that, bro. No, the fence.
Yeah.
Other side of the fence. Do they ever say
The
that?
grass.
The grass? There's always green on the other side.
Yeah. Let's talk about Lysol wipes.
You got some right there.
Yeah, well, that's great value.
Huh.
Lysol wipes.
Oh, you're right. Do they get great value, or they just like get Lysol for Corona? Or they get everything that's disinfectant?
I think anything, to be honest. You're lucky to find great value. Because cheaper is probably sold out quicker.
It's because I don't know how to put this into words. It's like,
Well, sing it.
Sing it.
That's still
worse,
words.
bro.
Use telekinesis to share it with me. Okay. Right here. Yeah, so I mean, I do take a bath at least once a day.
I mean, that's not what I asked, but close enough, you know. So, like, one thing that I find is like it's there are certain people that like take Andy for instance, or who else could I give as a frame of reference? So basically, they're sort of people that like you could say life of the party, where it's like if they're there, you know that you're gonna have a good time, and you know that it's gonna be an interesting sort of night, like whether even if you're not doing anything. Like there's someone at my work called Aaron, where he's able to do that. There's like I have a couple of friends from Haiti. One of them is Juve, and the other one is Gucci and Dave. It's like people that even though you may not be doing anything at all, it's still an interesting time. Like you have a fun time. So
yeah.
How do you think like you could achieve something like that as an individual?
I don't know. I think it's relative.
Mm-hmm.
So like for me, it's different for everyone. You might find someone the life of the party just because, I mean, you're friends with them. Like sometimes I think it's if I'm like going out or whatever, I'm like, can Chu come? Because like even though Chu might not be like loud and like exciting and everything, he might be more reserved. It's just cool for him to come because like it's a good mix, I guess. I don't know. It's like without him there, it's I don't know. You just don't have someone to talk to, maybe. Even my roommate, like Douglas, like just having them go out, they like to take risks and stuff, and I think people like that are fun to go out with. But then you want a good balance, you know? So you don't want someone that's too hyper, because they're gonna be the ones having all the fun. And you don't want someone too quiet because then it's just gonna be boring. So you need like a good mix of that. Someone that's gonna have fun but also knows when to like shut up. And it's kind of like picking an RA staff because you don't want to pick everyone that's goody two shoes. You don't want to pick everyone that's partying. You want a good mix of people who are gonna be connecting to the residents and like super diverse and like weird, funky. And you want someone who's gonna be shy, someone who's going to be open to talk about anything. You want different people. So I think for me, like finding the life of the party just means finding someone that can go to the party with you and have a good balance of things. I don't know.
So it's like,
but for me, I guess I don't know. I just would want to go with anyone that's like a friend of mine. It doesn't necessarily matter who. Life of the party. It's because I am the life of the party. I don't need anyone.
Oh, I am. Yeah.
Nah. It all depends on like someone that's able to connect other people together. I think back then when I used to go out more, it would be someone that knew a lot of people. Because if you know a lot of people, you can connect. Be like, hey Pat, this is my friend Joe. Be like, what's up, Joe? And be like, Joe knows Sarah. Why don't you guys hang out? And so you'll be like, oh, I know Sarah too, And so now you and Joe both know Sarah, and Sarah knows both of you. So now you're friends with Joe. Bingo, bango. And that's because I connected you to Joe, who knew Sarah. So like having someone that knows everybody,
So how do you become that? Like, do you think there's like a secret spice to because one of the ways that we were able to establish our friendship is that we were able to spend some time together and we got to like know each other. But it's like,
it's because I called you.
Yeah.
For the housing office.
Wait, how did that happen?
Okay, so here's the story of how Patrick ended up living with me. I was in the housing office. This was the summer before I was moving into Hickory as an RA for my first year, and so I had to pull in 3 other people. Becca and Abby were coming in for sure because they were clean and they were going to be on their own side. I wasn't going to have to worry about that. Dennis was going to be on my side, but fortunately for him, he became an RA, and so he was no longer going to be living with me. So that room was open, and I didn't want to risk getting someone random, even though Patrick's a little random. So I was in the housing office working and looking through papers and stuff, doing my job, and this pile of papers came where it was people who didn't have housing yet. And so I was scrolling through it, and I was like, all these people are looking for housing. This is basically like Tinder, but my next door roommate. So I could swipe on any of these people and they could potentially live with me. And so I saw Patrick's name in that list, and I was like, wow, computer science major, I think I know him. And I have no problem. Like, I don't think he'd be any issue with being a roommate. And boy, was I wrong. No, but I called him and I was like, do you want to live with me? Do you have a place to stay? And he's like, no, do you want to live with me? And he's like, yes, Timmy. And then next thing you know, he's moving in. And yeah, it was interesting. I think it was such a good mix of people. Good apartment.
Great apartment.
And I would say fairly no conflicts, very little to any. Just because sometimes we kept to ourselves, but sometimes we hung out. It was a good vibe.
Yeah, good balance.
And then he left, so it lasted for a good time, and then he didn't stay long enough to where if it was going downhill, I mean, I wouldn't have known anyway. So
yeah.
So yeah, but then again, I've never had roommate conflicts, real roommate conflicts. So I don't know. Maybe it's just our personalities.
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about before you brought up how we met. We got friends, making friends. So building that relationship. So it's like we have a rapport of each other. But in order to build that rapport of each other, we had to one of us had to open up, right? So I don't think one of us had to open up, but it was it was a free flowing conversation. So it's like
Yeah.
it's like the same way that we're having here, the kind of conversation we were having here. That's the kind of conversation we're having in public. But the thing is, there are certain people who are like it's easier for them to pull that out or like make that happen. You get what I'm saying? So it's like easier for them to build. Like it's like you just met them and you feel like you know them.
Yeah.
So
You know why? I think it's because they aren't afraid. They have nothing to lose. And when I was younger and like in elementary school, I was very shy, and I really didn't like. I wasn't very outgoing, I guess. And so one of the things is when I started getting into high school and stuff, I started reaching out and like being more open, doing drama club and stuff, and being more outgoing. And coming to college, I was like, okay, I'm a new person. This is my whole new identity. I can be whoever I want to be. And so I'm going to be the person that's outgoing and is friends with everyone. And so freshman year, I was like, I don't care what happens. I'm going to sit in the cafeteria with a new person every day. So I did that, and I met a lot of people at the cafeteria. That's how I met my roommate that I'm with now. And through them, I met their friend groups because they wouldn't do the same thing as me, like sit with random people, or it's kind of weird. But freshman year, I mean, who cares? Everyone's new. Nobody knows anyone. So, I mean, I met, like, upperclassmen, too, through this. And then they introduced me to their friends. And through that, like, that's how I started growing my network. And you know what? Sometimes it was nice because I knew a lot of people. And it was great figuring things out and, like, seeing new things and everything. But then again, I never had a strong connection with any of these people. So later on down the years, junior, senior year, I started actually dropping people, I guess, or not talking to people as much, which is, it's hard a little bit, and it's sad because certain people try to keep talking back to you. But like, I try to talk to the people who I guess I'm most friends with, like, you know. I guess me personally, like, I've always had the mentality that I don't reach out very often, or I don't talk or reply, and that's just because I grew up in a school with only like 5 other people, and military kids come and go, so like it was an international school, and I had a single friend for like a year, and then they'd be gone the next day. So that's the thing. I mean, I wasn't used to having long-term friends, and so coming to college, I was like, I don't really care if I make a friend and then they leave the next year or the next day. And so I think that's why I met a lot of people, and like, I was able to connect with so many, because I really didn't care. And I didn't care what people thought about me, and I didn't care about other people, about if they were weird or whatever. Like, I could care less what problems they had. You know, it didn't affect how I viewed them, you know, too much at least. And so I think that's the secret. Just, you gotta be willing to take a risk and not worry about what other people are gonna think about you. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't the cool kid. At least I don't think people were like, hey, it's pretty cool. You know, like, this is kind of weird. Cool. And I didn't really care, you know? Because that's not my priority. My priority, I guess, is like education and just kind of my hobbies. So
that's cool, man.
Thanks.
You're the cool guy.
Thanks.
It's definitely interesting how there's different personalities. Like, just it's like you could always find. Like, it's true that you could categorize certain people into like more out, like you said, outgoing or more shy or more like something along those characteristics. But within each of those groups, there's still like differentiating factors of those individuals.
That's
so
true.
It's definitely cool. Yeah. But one of those things that I think is pretty one of the things that's pretty like cool. I don't know, for lack of better words, is being able to build that stronger connection. It's like, yeah, it's making those weak connections is easy. You just like walk up to the person and just like have those surface level conversations where it's like game, I don't know, like basketball, along those lines, and then, but when you have to dig in deeper than those surface level conversations and strengthen that sort of connection, that's when it's like, it gets harder.
Yeah.
And I find that people who are able to dig in to that deeper layer, they're very interesting. Something I've been trying to work on, but
Neural network.
neural deep learning.
Oh man, we're too into computer science.
Yeah.
This is sad.
It really is. Like, what would we be doing if we were doing computer science?
Honestly, I don't even know, man. Maybe business.
Yeah.
We'd be partying probably a lot more.
Cool, crazy.
Oh yeah, didn't you guys talk about that?
Yeah.
I don't know why it leads to that. But
I don't know. It's just, if you find a common thing to shit on, it's like I don't know why computer science like shitting on business so much.
I mean, but we're kind of shitted on in the engineering field.
Yeah.
You know, are we engineers? We're
Yeah.
computer scientists, not computer engineers.
Like,
There's computer engineering, which is separate from software engineering. So, yeah.
I really think that software engineering is the easiest field easiest field and most lucrative in
I would agree, and I don't know if that's just because I'm in it, or if because I hear people who were in computer science and they ended up switching to a different engineer because they didn't like to code. They thought coding was too hard, and you know what, it's not for everyone. And like, if they're better with hands-on stuff, maybe some type of mechanical or electrical engineering is more for them.
Yeah.
But then that's more math-based, I feel like.
Yeah.
So, and physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those classes are tough. Physics. My God.
Yeah.
Those are all people tough.
You got through it.
Yeah. Did you have Kagan?
I had two different teachers. I had O'Reilly and Fisher.
I didn't have any of those.
That's the recording.
So. I know. Like, we've been checking every 5 seconds to make sure
Waiting
that
for
it's
it to stop.
blinking. Oh my God. Fuck that corruption, bro. Like, it was. It just decided not to work.
Every time it turns red, I look at it, I'm like, why is it not turning black again? Oh shit. It turns red for a second longer than it should be. So yeah. And is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. Yes, Tim.
Okay. You're editing all this, right?
No.
Oh, God.
All candid shit, bro.
It's gonna be a long video. If you're
know.
still watching, I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Props. Like I said, it's mostly an archive more than it is for entertainment.
Okay.
So it's like that.
And no one goes to libraries anymore anyway.
Yeah. So it's like it's for looking into the past. Because how often have you ever had anything online of you just like going at it for over an hour? Or?
Not like an hour. Well, yeah. I mean, my dad used to record Christmas videos since I was like a baby, and so every year we have a whole like hours of waking up Christmas morning, opening presents, stuff like that. So yeah, I have that, and also as a kid, my dad recorded everything, so I have that whole history of my life on film, and that's something that not a lot of people have. Even these days,
Yeah.
But I think more and more it's starting to become popular with social media and Facebook.
Yeah.
And you know, I even recorded a lot when I was in middle school and high school because I got into film, and then even now in college, I have a lot of things I've recorded. So all that stuff kind of is history, and yeah, I would say I have a lot of stuff. So this is just adding.
Yeah. Like to that big lump, and just add. Yeah. There's more. It's not like we have to pay for the space on YouTube, so. But it's
True.
crazy the amount of videos that YouTube gets.
The
Like,
bandwidth.
yeah.
Too. Did you take networking by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's like there was, I don't remember where I read it from or heard it from. It was like 300 gigs of video a day. Like
300 gigs
that
a day.
uploaded to. So that means 300.
I bet there's a lot more.
Yeah.
300 gigs a day.
A day.
I would imagine like a second
Okay.
or an hour.
Or something along those lines. Yeah.
Cause Yeah.
Yeah, it probably should be like yeah, it should be more. It's not 300 gigs a day. It's gonna be more like
300 a day. That's
because the hour video was 30 gigs. So I was like, it'll be 10 videos. Nah, it's 300 gigs like something.
and you're thinking like, how many people are on YouTube?
Yeah.
5 millions.
Yeah. So it's like 300 gigs per hour or something along those lines. But that's still like imagine how big are their data centers? You know.
Yeah, well, it's so distributed. I mean, and I mean they're working with Google, and I would say Google's probably one of the top. Google, Amazon. Yeah, they're probably the top. Acme, I don't know how to say it, but
Acme?
AKAMI. Something like that. Anyway.
Cloud provider? I don't know what Acme
yeah.
is.
Aren't they? Well, anyway, all these data centers, I mean, they're all distributed and they're so big. Google probably has data centers.
Google's listening in.
Oh, no.
Oh my god, I can't believe that.
Okay, Google.
I didn't even know that my.
That's crazy that I activated your phone.
Okay, Google. Wow.
So I just have to talk in a monotone deep voice. It's, okay, Google.
Say it again.
Okay, Google. Okay, Google. Okay, Google. I got my phone to work.
Yeah. That means that it's been. Are you scared? Like of you see how right now is just like waiting for that Google queue to start up. Like,
yeah.
You think that they're actually recording all of this and storing it somewhere? Or?
They are, because if you go in, you can actually play back from like days ago. You can actually listen to the recordings, unless you've disabled it. But I think it's automatically enabled. You go back and you can actually listen to what you've said and hear my voice as I'm driving down the highway and saying, "Okay, Google."
Yeah, but that's the okay Google part of it. Oh. It activated yours too.
The top result.
Okay,
That's
but
annoying.
yeah, but anything before the word, I'm not gonna say it again. So I don't do it. Like
What word?
the 2 words.
Well, 2 words.
Okay, G-O-L. G-O-G-L-E.
I can't spell.
I got you. Okay. For example, hey Alexa. When you say hey Alexa, okay,
Okay.
like it processed for the hey Alexa, and then I'm sure that it's like event driven where you like raise a flag if it says hey Alexa, but everything.
Do you think it's
before-
hardware? Like, there's hardware based? Do you think there's a chip for that, or do you think it's just always listening and the software is always listening?
I feel like it's soft, like it's always listening, and then it flags something when it gets those keywords.
Yeah.
It's like when you're listening into a converse, like it's like hearing your name. Like you could be in a crowd of a bunch of people, and then you're not really hearing everything, and then once they say Tim, and then you like some way you filter out everything except for the Tim. So like it's like filtering everything that's not the keywords. But in that filtering, like, do you think it stores any of the stuff it filters? Like you know how it's supposed to filter through and then get to the.
I think they definitely use it for AdSense and like. Yeah, they definitely listen to you, because I know I've seen videos and I think it's proven that they hear keywords and they target your ads based on the things that you say. So obviously it has to be stored somewhere for that. Whether what you say or whole phrases are stored, I don't know about that, but I'm sure like keywords that you say that are because certain keywords are probably flagged and marked as you've said this word 20 times today. Maybe you do want to get Lysol wipes, so now I'm going to get added for Lysol wipes, you know?
Well, that's pretty insane how much power these sort of cloud providers have.
Yeah, and I think there's a trade-off. There's definitely a trade-off with convenience and security.
What do you mean by that?
Because it's nice to be able to just say okay and have directions to a place without having to touch your phone. But it's also nice not being listened to all the time. So like, what's nicer, you know? And that's something that we can't really answer.
So are those big big name companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, those like top tier software companies, are they in your plans or you like what are they indifferent about them?
I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be interesting to work with them, see what it's like. But right now, I don't have plans to work with them. I mean, maybe, you know, I can't predict the future, so I don't know if I'm gonna be there. But I don't know if that's something I'm interested in right now. But, like, I don't want to shut down any opportunities. I'll be down for it.
Yeah, someone from there's listening and you're like.
I mean, I think with my type of mentality, it would be nice working there, just because having that innovative and creative mind is a lot different than someone who sits down and codes all day and is able to create stuff based on what they hear. You know, so I mean, you have two different like groups of people, and I think they need everyone they can get. So, like, I'm sure I could contribute a lot, but I don't know.
You mean you don't know? Like,
I don't know what it would be like, how life would be different and everything.
if you were working at one of those places?
Yeah. Maybe it'd be the same as like working anywhere else as a software developer. I mean, there's a lot of benefits and like perks and stuff that come with it, but in terms of just the work that you have to do, everything, I get my satisfaction from being useful and actually having stuff to create and provide. And so working in a place like that, I might not be seen as much and might not have that as much input as I would in a smaller startup or some type of company. And so it'd be interesting seeing how it would be different. But I can't say for sure because I've never worked there yet.
But the thing is, for getting into those kind of companies, like you've I don't know if you ever looked into the interviewing process and all that stuff, like what kind of questions they ask. So it's like one of those things, like you can't just get into there by just like the tech stack that you've used and all that stuff. You have to be fundamentally well grounded and
be prepared.
So that's why I asked, like do you ever envision yourself actually spending the time to get prepared for those kind of things, or is it like
in the past I have a little bit. I've considered, and I've actually have done like some stuff like of those style type interviews and programming questions and stuff like that. And I don't know. When I was younger, I kind of wanted to go more into defense contracting, just because it was something my dad did, and I liked the purpose. Like, I liked the idea of defense and felt like it was useful in like protecting and everything. But I mean, as time goes on, I'm getting interested in different things, and so maybe I'll get bored of it and try something new. But yeah, as of right now, that's where I stand.
yeah, that's true. How do you feel being a software engineer in the 21st century? Because it's a relatively new field. Like, I don't think that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's cool. Plenty of opportunity to grow and create the standard, set the standard for the years to come. Especially with networking, I think there's a lot of improvements that can be made, and things are changing rapidly. And I think we're in a good time to be the ones to innovate and to create new technologies like that. So it's a great time. But you know, years will pass and there's going to be even new stuff to develop on top of. Unless coronavirus takes over, then we're out.
They say you don't have to worry about it if you're young. Well, the thing is, like, the thing that you would have to worry about if you're young is like spreading it to other people, but
Yeah,
death is, unless you have underlying conditions. But.
surely true.
To me,
Yeah.
I think we should call it one. Do you have any? Is the like before we end this? like if you had like one last thing that you would want to tell people, or just like one like life motto or something along those lines, that just like your experience, what your experience has brought you so far, and something that you've learned, like one thing that you'd be able to share with the rest of us, what would it be?
Google it. Actually, Pat, this whole time you've been asking me questions, but I think I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What would you say to that question?
What would I say to for one thing to teach them?
Yeah.
Listen more than you speak, because there's a lot to learn as an individual. So I think that life has a lot to it, and there's still a lot to be discovered, and other individuals know a lot of things. So listen more than you speak.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a very, very useful tip.
You good to me? Hopefully this time it didn't break. Okay. It's still recording, so.
Hopefully. Bruh.
I didn't even say hey Google this time.
I just said bro.
That's how I refer to my Googles. Thank you, Timmy. Smile for the camera. How do I Hi, handsome.
Hi.
You ready for your casting? we got the couch right here.
This is not what I thought I signed up for.